Hello, everyone. Welcome to True Diversity Film Series, Standing in Solidarity. My name is Donna Walker-Kuhn. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm Senior Advisor for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at New Jersey Performing Arts Center. This evening, we are pleased to host a conversation on building an environmentally and equitable New Jersey. And while no one is immune from the harmful effects of climate change, low-income and communities of color remain disproportionately affected by environmental issues. So we're going to explore this in a dynamic conversation. And this discussion was also informed by the documentary, The Meaning of the Seed, and that link was included in your RSVP. I'd also like to thank NJPAC's Arts Education Department that curated the panel for this evening. The Social Justice Series is part of our Standing in Solidarity initiative. The purpose of this series is to bring our community together and to encourage everyone to take part in the movement to ensure civil rights for all. On our website, you can find archived prior social justice panel discussions, as well as resources that will help you take action. We are in our fourth season of producing these social justice panel discussions. We're also very happy to have as our advisors the Newark NAACP, the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, Newark Arts, the Truth, Racial Healing and Transformation Center of Rutgers University, Newark, the Africana Institute at Essex County College, Asian American Arts Alliance, and the ACLU New Jersey. Now, New Jersey PAC would like to offer a land acknowledgement. The language we're using was created with consultation and guidance from Chief Dwayne Perry of the Ramapo Lenape Munsee Tribe and Oleano Whispering Dove of the Salagi Algonquin descendants. And we're grateful to them for their generosity, wisdom, and labor to craft these words. We, the Lenape, original benefactors of land once ripened and cultivated with attentiveness to the Creator and her ascendancy, express everlasting gratitude to our Creator for the traditional ancestral jurisdictions of the Munsee, Esopus, Canarsie, Capsee, Werpoes, Suwannee, and Wekasqueak, jointly known today as the Ramapo and Natikote Lene Lenape. We are the Lenape Hoking today and will be for the remaining days of tomorrow, keepers of the past. Let this moment of recognition be a monument of action. Let it be the beginning of hope for this, our Turtle Island, and for the Ramapo Lenape, the Munsee people on whose land we now trod. Here on this land, in this place of the Munsee, we acknowledge our debt to those who have come before us, to those who have been denigrated and suffered for the sake of cultural and land appropriation. Let this, our land acknowledgement, be the beginning of our return to unity. Let us be guardians of the water, the air, the earth, the four-legged, the flyers, the swimmers, the crawlers, the mammal people, and the green. Let us now stand lifting our humanity and enrapturing with Earth's consciousness as guardians of harmony and kindness. So we would also like to take this moment to thank our sponsors, PSE&G, for their ongoing support for over close to 10 years of supporting our social justice series. Thank you so much, PSE&G. Now I'd like to introduce our dynamic moderator for this evening, Dr. Micaela Martinez, who's Director of Environmental Health at We Act for Environmental Justice. Dr. Martinez is an ecologist and justice advocate, she is responsible for advancing the organization's efforts to improve environmental health in communities of color and low-income communities. She does this by promoting public health awareness, education, coalition building, and advocacy. She has her doctorate in ecology and evolution and has served as an assistant professor at Columbia University in their public health department. Dr. Martinez is currently leading We Act's Beauty Inside Out campaign, which seeks to remove toxic chemicals from beauty products, particularly products that enforce Eurocentric beauty standards and are marketed toward women of color. Welcome, Dr. Martinez. We're delighted to have you with us this evening.
Thank you so much. I'm actually trying to get permission to start my video. If the tech team can please help with that. Oh, here we go. Wonderful. Yeah, thank you so much, Donna, for having me. I really appreciate the kind introduction, and I'm really excited to be here tonight. And so I wanted to start off giving a quick introduction to our panelists and then have them all join in to tell us a little bit more about themselves. So tonight we have 4 wonderful panelists who are all environmental justice leaders in the state of New Jersey. We have Ana Batista, Kim Gaddy, Maria Lopez Nunez, and SD Smith, also known as OWL. If all of the panelists would like to turn on their cameras now. So Kim Gaddy, is a founder of the South Ward Environmental Alliance, which is a grassroots environmental justice organization based in New Jersey. Ana Batista is associate professor in the Environmental Policy and Sustainability Management program at the New School. Maria Lopez Nunez is a director of advocacy and organizing at Ironbound Community Corporation, and OWL is a Ramapo Muncie professor and educator from New York. And so now I would love to have each of the panelists just tell us a little bit more about themselves, and we can start with Kim.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. As was stated, I'm Kim Gaddy, founder of the Southward Environmental Alliance. And for the last 23 years, I've been an environmental justice organizer. I am currently the National and New Jersey Environmental Justice Director for Clean Water Action. And I actually got into this space as an environmental advocate because of the health of my children. As a 4th generation Newarker, my children being reared in the city, they all had asthma. And so this was the space that I felt I needed to make a presence to begin to address the health injustices in Newark and the state. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Kim. Ana?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Martinez, for the introductions. I'm Ana. I'm not only an associate professor here at the New School, but I also run a center called the Tishman Environment and Design Center, and we work with many community-based grassroots EJ and climate justice organizations around the country and here in the region. And I sit on the board of the Ironbound Community where Maria is now leading efforts, and also sit on the board of the New Jersey EJ Alliance. I'm originally from Newark, and really got started in this work growing up in Newark, and then being privileged to work there for many years on EJ issues on the ground, and continue to try to support and uplift groups doing the hard work on the front lines wherever I can through the center here. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Maria?
Hello, I'm Maria Lopez Nunez. I work with Ironbound Community Corporation. I'm also on the board of the Climate Justice Alliance, and I've been appointed to the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council. So it's been an amazing, just an amazing time watching environmental justice really go from something that no one was talking about to watching the whole nation talk about it, and to be able to be with my colleagues here, Kim and Ana, you know, just affecting federal policy and seeing the impact that, you know, we passed the Community of Impacts law here in New Jersey, our organizations, and watching it go all across the country. It's a good time to be in environmental justice, and I'm happy to be here tonight.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Owl.
Tishalamo Queen, Queen Witch Male. Huachimanchi, Queen Witch Male. Ninjusinzi, Kokos Ramapo, Nawalatamundak, Ato Ramapo, Muncie, Lenape, Anishinabek. So it's really a pleasure and gives me hope to be able to talk to you in the Muncie language. It's not my first language. And they say that New York is the most linguistically diverse region on the planet. Over 800 languages are spoken in this metropolitan area. Until recently, Muncie was all but killed off as a living language, but we're bringing it back thanks to our relatives in Canada there. So what I said was I was asking a creator, our word for creator being who created us from thought, for help, and also watching Manitou, oftentimes translated the Great Spirit, also for help. I won't go into details there. And then I just introduced myself by my name, Owl, my clan, Deer Clan, of the Ramapo people, of the Muncie people, whose territory this is, of the larger Lenape people, of the Anishinaabe people here on the East Coast. And really, while we all might not be indigenous to this area, we're all native to this planet. So I think if we keep that in mind, we'll see how we're all connected to each other. In this modern age, we as Ramapo people are known as keepers of the past, guardians of the passageway, which is our mountains there. And so I would encourage all of us here to, and we all in some way, shape, or form are, I believe, or else we wouldn't be here, just take up our mantle, our duty to be guardians of the earth, or you know, to you know, go forward in a good way. And then finally, I will give you a prayer in Muncie that I often say. Amishi Kisha Lamokoin, Amishi Kwachi Manitou, Alamiliang, Kaganai Ki, walk, Mbi, walk, Kashong, walk, Kindao, Amishik, 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 Amishik. And that's a prayer of thanks again to who created us from thought, the realization that our thoughts and desires are real as well. We may not have all that we want right now, but it starts with the thought. It starts with the seed, as the film was saying. So thanks for that seed, that thought. Thanks for manifestation, Great Spirit, for giving us our Mother Earth, you know, our waters, wind and fire. And it's a recognition that what we most need in this world, we already have. You know, the food, the water. And it's a matter of, I think it starts with recognition and thanks. And then maybe we can relate to these different elements. We would call them beings in creation in a different way. And I'll just finally just end with water. Water. I mean, and this wasn't even a medicine person who said this. This was an assistant of mine who's a European descent. He said it's not so much that we have rights to water, which any good government will recognize. We are water. We are literally water. Most of our bodies are water. So does it take a genius to figure out that what we put into the air and the water eventually comes back to us? So that's what I would like to bring to the discussion today is Anashik, our word for thanks. Anashik, just thank you for being here with you in this circle, and just thanks to all the elements of creation that allow us to be here. So Anashik, thank you for this invitation.
Thank you for that, Elle. Very much appreciated and giving us that context. And so now I just wanted to open up the conversation with asking each of our panelists to share with the audience, what does environmental justice mean to you? Because I know that each of us are coming from very different contexts and connected to different communities. And so whoever would like to kick it off.
Okay, I'll start. Environmental justice to me means liberation. That's our ability to live free of toxics, pollutions in our community, and not be discriminated against because of the color of our skin or the zip code we reside in. With the Southward Environmental Alliance, we believe in the Nagubu-Sabo principles, and as Kwanzaa is coming up on the 26th, it also means self-determination, Kujijagalia. And that is our ability to define ourselves, name ourselves, create for ourselves, and to speak for ourselves. And so that's what environmental justice means to me, to be able to have that voice and to protect, you know, our families and our communities with true liberation. Thank you.
I'll go next. Yeah, environmental justice is so important in a city like Newark, because everywhere we look, people are talking about electric this, electric that. But for a city like Newark that's been, deemed a sacrifice zone, it's no coincidence that there are white suburbs all around us that have, beautiful long lawns, that have huge trees. They breathe different air than we do. They drink different water. They have access to different land. And that environmental racism is what environmental justice is a response to, right? Like, environmental justice is the world that we want, and the world that we, vision for, that we yearn for, especially as Black and Brown people in this country of genocide and slavery, right? Like, there's been a long history of extraction of human bodies. And so it's so important to make sure that environmental justice is centered, and that people of color, are the ones leading decisions, as we're thinking about the world in terms of climate change and the changes that we really need to see happen in our communities.
Anna or Al, would you also like to answer that?
Al, would you like to go first? Or?
Well, I think men speak too much in this world. I think that's part of the problem. So I'll defer.
Yeah, no, I think Kim and Maria said it beautifully. I can give you my professor spiel that I make my students learn. But one of my favorite definitions is Bunyan Bryant. I don't know if you all remember Bunyan Bryant, but he was out of University of Michigan, an OG in the early, when nobody was talking about environmental justice, and everybody kept defining it as what it wasn't, like pollution concentrated in communities of color. He's like, no, environmental justice is what we want. And that's communities having the freedom and the ability to fulfill their highest potential and realize their highest thriving selves and communities and families, right? Free of all the isms. And just reminding us that there is a vision of that future that is alive and well in all of these struggles, whether you're talking about distributive injustice or procedural justice, all these fancy terms, but really it's people, communities realizing their fullest potential and being able to thrive. So yeah, I'll leave it there.
The Latin American author, Eduardo Galeano, I think put it best in terms of a fundamental difference in orientation to the environment and justice between traditional indigenous communities and, let's say, the modern industrial orientation. And when I say modern industrial orientation, I would include such great civilizations like India and China in that. And I think it's also important to recognize that even amongst indigenous people here, I mean, we're not cartoon characters, we're not two-dimensional. So, there's many communities that are involved in fossil fuel extraction, or in the past, more so than now, uranium extraction. And part of that is the colonialism. It wasn't something that emerged from these communities, but was, I would say, imposed from without. At the same time, the greatest environmental defenders we have on the planet, the greatest people pushing for environmental justice, are the traditional indigenous people. But Eduardo Galeano said that from a Western, just a fundamental aspect of consciousness from a modern industrial perspective, whether it is to exploit the environment like miners want to do, or interestingly enough, to protect the environment like the environmentalists want to do, the environment is seen as an object outside of the person. Indigenous people don't see that kind of separation and focus more on the relationship. So we see ourselves as reflected in the environment, and the environment is reflected in ourselves as well. And I hope all of you all in the audience there are sitting down, because I'm about to tell you something that some of you may know, maybe most of you. But each and every one of us carries a body burden of over 200 industrial chemicals. So it means that every baby that's born in the world today has that legacy of environmental pollution. And it's kind of a testament to our Mother Earth and our bodies that, you know, we're able to still survive. But I can't think of any better analogy than that straw that breaks the camel's back. You know, sometimes we take straws off and other times we put straws back on. Like in the 1970s, the way we consumed, say they had gasoline, for example, and I think they probably measured some of those cars, some of those big boats they used to have. I'm an old man, they used to have these huge boats. I think you can measure those in gallons per mile. You know, now they have, you know, say more fuel efficient cars. I mean, does that mean we're out of the woods? No, we're deeper into the woods, but you know, it's taking straws off the camel's back and putting them on the camel's back. And unfortunately, I think we're still in an era where we're putting too many straws on the camel's back. And you know, perhaps the one of the greatest expressions of environmental justice I've seen was that of a man named Corbin Harney. I was at a conference, public interest environmental law conference in Oregon, and he got up to speak, and it was almost biblical on a metaphorical scale. This opened up my eyes to a lot, because he got up there and he says, my nation is the most bombed nation on the planet. And I'm trying to think of where's he going with that. But he said that, you know, he says, I'm Shoshone. And there's where they had the Nevada test site. They had 100 above ground nuclear tests and 800 underground nuclear tests. And he was saying to the people, he said, look, the desert isn't devoid of life. You know, we, the Shoshone people, live there. And then again, in that indigenous consciousness, we're not only concerned about ourselves as human beings, we're also concerned about other beings in creation. So he talked about the other animals that were there, the birds, the insects, even the trees, living beings, even the stones have a certain integrity that needs to be respected. So for me, that's what environmental justice means is, you know, how do we, you know, relate to each other as human beings in a good way, and also to other people. And this kind of finally is that, you know, we live in this earth, and we can't just take the luxury of just saying, oh, this is going to go somewhere else. Like justice, I'm a lawyer, and I've been in court many a time, and you know, a judge might sentence someone to 5 or 10 years and say, you know, 10 years in prison. You may not ever see that person again. But if you're in a tribal community, you will see that person again. That person might even be a family member. So that gives you a different perspective on justice. And I think that's how we have to approach the nature as well. We can't just use it as a cesspool. I mean, that's our home. So that's what environmental justice means to me. Anishi, thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And so the next question I wanted to pose to the panel is, what are some ways that you have seen environmental injustice impact your community and the communities that you serve? Just giving the audience a little bit more context regarding some of the things that all of you have been dealing with in your local areas.
Yeah, I'll kick it off. And, you know, Ironbound's really interesting because it's only about 4 square miles, but we have 3 power plants. We have the state's largest garbage incinerator and the largest sewage waste treatment facility. And all of that is us surrounded by also what's a really long Superfund site. It's 17 miles of a Superfund site where during the Vietnam War, we produced Agent Orange, right? So we're the largest producers of Agent Orange actually in Newark. And the byproduct dioxin, a chemical poison, right? Cancerous chemical for human beings. It was being dumped right into the river, and trucks were coming into the neighborhood, picking it up and then spewing it all around town. To me, that's like a clear, you know, visual, physical manifestation of environmental injustice being enacted on the city of Newark. So that's my example.
And I guess I'll go next. And in the South Ward of Newark, you know, our community is adjacent to the 2nd largest port. And the first 2 is in California. And so the port is the economic engine for the region, but it is the death zone for residents who live in Newark, Elizabeth, Bayonne, Jersey City, breathing in the toxic fumes, the diesel fumes from the 20,000 plus trucks that come in and out that port every day and stay on our local roads. When you think about our Dayton Street neighborhood of the South, where we have 3 neighborhoods, Dayton Street, Weequahic, and Clinton Hill, the Dayton Street neighborhood is the closest to the port and the airport. Freeland Heights and Avenue, in 1 hour, we do truck counts, 300 trucks come up and down that community. We're low income. The Newark Housing Authority sites are located for our senior citizens and our family members. On this one stretch of maybe 10 blocks, we had a Superfund site. We have Sims Metals Management, which is the largest recycling metal facility in the world. We have about 6 transfer station. We have repair places for vehicles. We have brownfields. And so when you think about the cumulative impacts of pollution, and you have all of this within a 10-block radius where thousands of residents reside, that is, a snapshot into our community. And all of these impacts cause premature deaths from asthma, heart attacks, kidney failures, diabetes. And, it is where low income and people of color reside. And so that's how it shows up in the South Ward of the city of Newark.
Great. Al or Anna, would you like to go?
Yeah, I mean, I might mention, Maria mentioned the Passaic River. There's also, she can tell us more about also the many power plants that are in Newark, and the incinerator. And this is not unique to Newark. We work with communities all over the country. We did a national study of incinerators, and guess where garbage incinerators are? 80% of them are in communities of color and low wealth communities, or indigenous communities, right? So incinerators that, belch out a lot of toxic chemicals that are harming people's health are in these communities. And we have the biggest one in the region right here in Newark. We have one in Rahway, Camden. These are not coincidences, right? The same thing with power plants. We're talking about energy transitions and decarbonizing, but Newark is home, to 3 or 4 major power plants, and their Passaic Valley Sewage is proposing a 4th power plant in the city of Newark. And, Maria and Kim can tell you more about the campaign to stop this insanity. At a time we're talking about the climate crisis and how communities are impacted by climate change, and then they're going to put another fossil fuel power plant in the community that was flooded because of climate change. The ironies, are not lost on communities, right? That these things keep getting perpetuated. So those are just some examples of, cases that are still ongoing in New Jersey and Newark specifically, but all throughout the country where communities are fighting these industries and these fossil fuel plants.
Well, many of you all in the audience probably familiar with the Ringwood Superfund site, the Ford Superfund site, and that's probably the most impactful expression of environmental justice that we have right now. To kind of give you some context as well, is Ringwood is also that they tend to concentrate a lot of the heavy industry or heavy infrastructure in that area goes through Newark, and I don't think it's an accident. There's a really good book called The Color of Law, and it really kind of explains that we have an apartheid system here in the United States, but I guess because we have Hollywood, it's presented better. But I was reading the book, and then I got confused on it, to be honest with you. I was trying to figure out, was it that the people of color were in a certain area and then the heavy industries came in, or the heavy industries there to begin with and they brought the people of color in? But whatever way you look at it, there's a direct correlation between the heavy industries, the most polluting environments, as we're hearing on the panel today, and people of color. And even with the indigenous people, I mean, you have examples of the Cherokee where people were actually physically removed from their native lands. Then you have other examples of, let's say, Navajo Nation, the Dene people, where they are on lands, their ancestral lands, but restricted in many more ways than what they once were, including access to their sacred sites. What's interesting, though, is that a lot of the areas where indigenous people are areas that were considered not to be valuable to the society, particularly in the industrial society at the time people were there. And that's always been a problem for us. Every time we have land that's considered to be valuable, then we know we're in trouble. Ramful Mountains, no one wanted the land that we're at right now. I mean, there's a reason why they call it Rockland County. They have these huge boulders, these huge rocks all over the place. You can't have amber waves of grain there. You can't have monoculture there with the trees and the rocks. But once they opened up the throughway, once Highway 17 going up there to upstate New York, once it became accessible to New York City, a short drive away, now we're in the process of, ironically, gentrification, where there's really moves to remove us from the remaining lands that we're on. So that's another aspect of environmental justice. Is almost like gravity. It seems like the way the economic system's set up, the real estate set up, is that, you know, just systemically, not even necessarily consciously, but systemically, there's incentives to really dispossess us of our lands and resources. As far as Ramfo people, you know, we've been, you know, the backbone of the workforce in many respects in this area, in this country, for a very long time. The first ironworks, talk about the Ringwood mines, those were the first ironworks of the revolution. You talk about the Agent Orange, seems like a similar story to what we have with the iron deposits. The brake shoe factory for the subway system there. I mean, we had a lot of elders that would die at a young age. You know, I guess Chief Perry was telling me 50, 60 years old, because they were breathing in all that pollution, all that dust from those industries. So we're not only talking about the death and impacts from the Ringwood mine, but just the industrial violence that our communities suffer. I mean, that's, how do you measure that? You know, people that lose, you know, 10, 15, 20 years of their life, you know, people whose parents die young. I mean, how do you measure that? But those are some of the ways that I see environmental justice showing up in my community. And I also recognize that there are many ways it shows up that I do not see. So thank you for your question there on the sheet.
Yeah, thank you for that. And so then we heard about Agent Orange production, the ports in Newark, and all of the diesel trucks that are coming into communities, the power plants and incinerators, and then the Superfund sites. And so the next question that I have for the panels or panel members is, have you experienced examples where industry has done harm and then essentially the government hasn't acted in the way that they should because of industry influence, or the government acting kind of more in favor of industry rather than community? And how do your organizations or your work and your community deal with issues like this? Guess we'll start with Maria.
Kim got this one, but what you call it? So yeah, I mean, it happens all the time. Otherwise, there wouldn't be environmental racism, right? Like it. And to be clear, environmental racism is completely fueled by our government. Our government has been lax on regulations, if they exist. You know, if they exist, they're not enforced. And industry is really aware that politically, if they're near Black and brown people, no one's gonna bother, right? Like they're not gonna be bothered with. When, you know, we do see white communities disproportionately be able to stop projects in their neighborhood. You know, when they say not in my backyard, they are listened to and respected, and alternative projects are built. A lot of money is spent. You know, like Anna said before, we've been fighting a fourth power plant. You know, so we have here is a public utility. It's not even private industry, a public utility deciding that they're going to put a natural gas plant, which is really methane gas, right? And they're going to put it in a neighborhood that already has 3 power plants. And the only reason that they're claiming they want to do this is because they might have more pollution going to the river river if, you know, we had another superstorm. But obviously we know that not to be true. There's been, you know, $2.1 billion of an investment in the grid up here in the Northeast since the since Superstorm Sandy. You know, there's been a sizable amount of green infrastructure. Our communities have been fighting for any and all alternatives, including getting FEMA to rescope the project. Governor Murphy did a solid for our community stepping in 2 years ago, but since that he's been silent. You know, we've seen every government official in Newark say that they're against this power plant, but then nothing's actually, it hasn't gone off the table yet. You know, it's almost as if they're just waiting for our community to get exhausted so that then they could push the project through, obviously with complete political support. You know, even for politicians that have publicly opposed it feels so sad that Black and brown politicians would not be respected in the city of Newark and in our state. You know, that they lack so much political power that even when the mayor and every elected official that represents our city has said no, you know, one man's word in a unelected official is enough to push a whole nother power plant onto a city that already has 3, you know? So for me, that's a great example of environmental racism, and then the state cooperating with it. And it's also that they don't lose their $150 million investment, you know? And our solution has been organized. That's all we have, right? All we have is people saying, you're not gonna kill us slowly, you're not gonna kill us fast, you know, like, our community is not going to go down without a fight. And so that's been amazing to be able to partner up with the Southward Environmental Alliance and to really fight one big fight for the city of Newark. Because even though the power plant might be in the neighborhood of the Ironbound, it affects everyone that lives in the vicinity, you know, because the air knows no boundaries. And so our organizing and our people power has to know no boundaries. We have to team up with each other's neighborhoods, with each other's city. You know, we've done a lot of great work with WeAct across the river because so many of these issues are translocal, right? Industry does not stay within political boundaries, and neither should our organizing.
Yeah, Ashe. And, you know, look, I just want to bring up a couple examples, but I agree with everything that Maria stated. You know, when you think about the history of zoning laws are based on racist practices. And so in the city of Newark, when we think about all this development that is happening, the development is actually killing, you know, our environment and our communities. They're allowing developers to come in and build and not plant any trees, not have setbacks, not have any green space, and just a lot of blacktop. You know, 78% of our city is covered with blacktop, and we have to change those habits. And so we are constantly fighting developers. When you think about with Clean Water Action, we've been fighting the highway expansion of the Garden State Parkway. You know, they always want to add more lanes to let people get in and out of the most marginalized communities. But what that's doing is putting more pollution and health impacts into the residents who live closest to the highways. And so we have fought, and in some cases, it's our county, it's our city officials, it's the governor, as Maria stated, you know, our senators, our assembly people. And so we continue to fight each and every day because we know that if we don't fight, we will lose the battle. And then when I think about the fights that we had with transfer stations wanted to be built in our community. And, you know, we won, we went to the zoning board, they postponed, but then politics come into play and deals are made. And then we have you know, another switching station in a community where it should not be. And then lastly, I want to just kind of connect to what Maria and Anna mentioned earlier. When there was a first fight in Clean Water Action, Ironbound Community Corp, and some of the other groups years ago was fighting against the first incinerator to be built down in the Ironbound. It was supposed to be that every municipality in Essex County was supposed to have their own incinerator. Once the incinerator was built in the city of Newark, and through all the fights that we had, they decided, oh, that's too much to be up in Mount Clair, to be up in Livingston. You to be up in some of these other communities. And so they made a decision that now there will be one incinerator for all of Essex County, for half of the state of New Jersey and New York. And that is a decision that was made purposely against the people of Newark. And so when I think about, you see Newark Strong all around the city, and when Clean Water Action, and I actually created that term, Newark Strong, we did it because we was creating a climate resiliency action plan with ICC, New Jersey Environmental Justice Alliance, and we all wanted to make sure that Newark would stand up against the worst. And so, to some degree, I'm appreciative that Newark Strong is everywhere. But the reality, Newark Strong was created for the environmental racism and environmental degradation that our community was experiencing. And we wanted to make sure people understood that Newarkers had a voice. And no matter what you throw at us, we're going to stand up and be resilient. And so we've won some battles and we've lost some. But at the end of the day, it is those development practices, it is those political decisions that's being made behind the scenes, at the expense of residents, children, senior citizens. And so we celebrate the victories that we do get, and then we fight for another day.
Thank you. And then Anna, did you have anything to add to that regarding like industry influence and some of these political decisions that are really working against our communities?
I mean, it basically describes almost all the EJ fights. I know from being on the Passaic River Community Advisory Group, the Superfund group, for over, now I'm going into a second decade on that advisory group, believe it or not. And I expect to be another decade or two on that before we see any cleanup happen. And the reality, I learned so much from being on that. $50 to $100 Fortune 500 industries around, global industries that have liability on the Passaic River. And, they have the power to drag out cleanups for generations. Okay, they can stall, they can sue, they can drag their feet, and they can put a lot of PR and lobbying behind misinformation and, getting people, confusing people, muscling people. They can go up and down the river to 50 different towns along that river, and tell them a different story. And what do we have? We have residents that have been waiting for decades, maybe generations, maybe, hundreds of years to get back to their river, get their river back. So it's easy to give up because, it's hard because these are generational fights in some cases. It took a long time to kill that river and to bring it back. It's going to take a long time. But what I learned is that the people have a moral authority that can speak volumes, to industry influence. They can uncover and shame and bring out truths that are undeniable, that no matter how much PR money you have, you can't hide, you can't bury that. And that is really important for folks to remember, that they do have agency and power, even when they're faced with monolithic amounts of money, that they can use to amplify their message about what's really going on in their communities. And so I take that as a hopeful sign that even in the David and Goliath fights, the people can win.
Thank you so much for that. And I also wanted to flag for the audience, because I'm sure now that they're hearing all of these examples, the wheels are probably turning and people are coming up with questions. And so feel free to start putting questions in the Q&A or also in the chat, and we'll be moderating them. We do have dedicated time towards the end for questions, but also I'll be checking them out and can be, I might work some of them into our current discussion. And I actually, just following up on what Anna was discussing regarding killing of the river. We talked about poisoning of the land with the Superfund sites and all of this industry pollution coming from various industry types. And I wanted to ask the next question, have Al started off, which is, what does land and connection to land mean to you and your community? Within this, but overall, but also when it comes to the fight for environmental justice.
Well, as I had mentioned earlier, Ramapo, we are known as keepers of the past, guardians of the passageway. So our connection to the lands and the waters and the air here is from time immemorial. It's interesting, we have this Gregorian calendar, and the 1,000 years, 2,000 years, but our relationship with space and time is a lot different. I mean, our traditional calendars go by the seasons, and even one of the moons, I think it's in the springtime there around, we call it strawberry moon, where the strawberries come out, or cracking tree moon, I guess, when you have the freezing and the branches literally coming off the trees sometime because of that. So our traditional view of time is a lot different in that respect. And I remember there's a film called American Native that talks about issues of identity and our indigenous lineage. And for us, we've in some ways we were more like the country's become even before the country, in the sense that even in the colonial period, we would have people from different communities come into our community. I have African lineage, and others have other types of lineage, but what unites us all is our connection to the land and our indigenous Munsee lineage. But in this film, American Native, it was interesting. One of the neighbors in this community called the Polo Club, which ironically is on land that we used to have houses on. They don't want us there anymore, of course, even though we were there before they were. But the man who was the homeowner association president says, those people are destroying our property values. Just having them there is destroying our property values. And what's going to happen if I want to sell this, or my child wants to sell this land? And that struck me on a lot of different levels. One is, I have to plead guilty. The way our system's set up, if you have a person of color that moves into a neighborhood, the property values do go down. That says something about the system of government, and how it really reinforces the racism in this country. It's hardwired in this country. I'm not going to shed any tears about it, but I guess there's a grain of truth to it, but that's systemic racism for you. But then also, it just struck me as odd where these are the lands of my ancestors. We're not thinking of, oh, let's sell this land and then move somewhere else. That's not our orientation. But it was just interesting how we've commodified everything, and even the land. So we live in a society that's really disconnected from the land. The idea that, oh, I can live here, 1 year, and then next year I'll be somewhere else, and then another year I'll be somewhere else. So that to me shows a disconnection from the land, and that's kind of reflecting how we treat the land. Like, oh, we'll just put this waste somewhere else, not in my backyard. We'll put that somewhere else. Not really realizing how, it comes back to us in one way, shape, or form. So that is what I would say, is that we have a generational connection to the land. We're all connected to the land. That's why I was saying we're all have a duty to, be with our environment and not harm our environment, our Mother Earth. We all have that duty. For us, though, these are our ancestors. Our ancestors are buried in these hills, so we're very deeply connected to the lands and waters that we occupy. The Ramapo River, that's the river that we're named after, and which means sweet water, the sweet water. And It's interesting how we like to give it different names, but the Ramapo River is the Passaic River. You know, it's part of the Wanakee Reservoir. And what happens there in Ringwood, the pollution that goes up there will come down to Newark and will affect the drinking water for millions of people in New Jersey. And I mean, I know I'm not supposed to answer the last question about this, be brief, but the last question reminds me of perhaps the closest thing to a scientific law that social science comes to, and that's through Frederick Douglass. He says, power concedes nothing except on demand. So in Ringwood, you know, because they reopened the Superfund site, they found a chemical called 1,2-dioxane that was leaching into the water, the headwaters for the Wanakee Reservoir. And to show you how government acts, even if they don't necessarily cause a problem, the EPA says, oh, it stays where it is. I mean, it's got to be the best behaved chemical I've ever heard of. 1,2-dioxane just stays there and stays put. I mean, of course it doesn't, but you know, that's what happens when we're dealing with environmental pollution in our communities. But you know, thank you for that question, Anshi.
Thank you so much for that. And so following up on some of Al's insights in terms of how for him and his community, environmental justice is very intricately tied to culture and way of life and well-being. So for the other three panelists, I wanted to ask, have there been ways that environmental justice has intersected with culture for you and the communities that you serve?
Yeah, and I guess I'll start. You know, it's so important because when you think about the history of the great city of Newark, New Jersey, the people that have stayed within our communities for generations. I'm a fourth generation Newarker and proud of it. You know, there's culture and history that was passed on to us, that lived in us. You know, we understand that the connection we have to our land is important. You know, we grew up in a tight-knit community. A lot of things have changed over time because of development, because of highways, because of disruptions that come into our community and remove the culture and the people, right? And so what we realized with Southward Environmental Alliance, and we tried to lift up and to make people at least hold on to, is that connectiveness of communities to their culture and the land. The things that have been passed on from generations, from my great-grandmother to my grandmother to my mother to me to now my children, and understanding the space, because we only have the land that God gave us. And once we overdevelop and abuse this land, we can't ever get it back. And the cultures and the values, just the gathering of the memories that we had gathering with families, the opportunities to visit our parks and recreate in our community with each other, you know, is so valuable. And so when you can have these spaces, these intergenerational spaces, you know, Southward Environmental Alliance have a senior citizen advisory council, and we have a youth advisory council. And that's intentional because the history of those senior citizens explaining to the next generation, those youth, of what has happened in this city. Because as you demolish and tear down buildings, you take away history and culture, right? I can drive through neighborhoods and you almost can't even tell what it was. But I make it my, you know, my business to kind of let my children know and community folks know, this used to be the bowling alley. This was X, Y, and Z, you know, so people could understand the richness and where we came and how we shared our lives with one another. So when you begin to just tear down buildings, you don't understand that historical connection that it had with culture and people. And even with the many places that we had for just our music, the jazz halls that we had, you know, just the social, where we used to socialize for parties and family gatherings, those places are gone. And so we try to continue to connect that And instead of building other, polluting facilities, we want to bring something back that can maintain and hold the culture of the people. We need environmental justice institutes in our community. We need, our museums that can tell the story of the environmental injustices from one generation to the next generation. And then I just want to kind of add this piece, from the last question, the meaning of the seed, and I want to acknowledge and thank Wayne Mann and Chief Manns, because when you think about that movie, and I hope everyone that's on tonight would take the opportunity to look at it. When you understand the seeds that now they're building new life, with their farm, being able to now provide food, there's still toxic land, but they're changing that around to help a community and then bring back the culture, and the history, right? That was lost. And so it is so important that we appreciate the sacredness of our land, and we appreciate the history of our people. And so for us, with environmental justice, we have to make sure we connect to that, because we are the griots, where we will pass on the history down from generation to generation. And, we just have to do that, or all of what our relatives stood for will be lost. And I don't want that in my city. And it's not that, we know gentrification is coming, and it's not that we want all poor neighborhoods. No, we want development, but we want development in a way that it respects our culture, respects our space, and the ability for us to coexist in a healthy environment.
Thank you so much for that. Anna or Maria, do you have anything you wanted to share regarding culture?
Yeah, I mean, culture is foundational to organizing, because let's just be real, we can't just go out and depress people with this work. This work has to be about life. It has to be something that brings you joy. It is a joyful activity to hang out with your neighbors and envision the city that you want, the city you can afford, right? We're a city that has space for all of us, that has space for people who have been here generations, and a space for newcomers. I mean, it was amazing to be in Newark as it became a sanctuary city. To watch Newark taking people from New York, then New York, ships over to us. And I feel like Newark's a city with a heart of gold, and Newark's a city that makes activists out of all of us, right? And really makes our interdependence so clear, right? What happens when we stick together. And if there's one thing, is Newark won't let people mess with Newark, so that's a beautiful thing right there, that we can all come out and defend the beautiful city that we love. And that's what culture is, right? We're all contributing to it. We're all contributing it with our different ancestry that we all bring to the table. I'm from Central America, and living in this country for a long time, people don't even know where my country is on a map. I have to be it's in the middle, with a bridge between South and North America. But when you look on maps, it doesn't exist, right? Because North America ends at Mexico and South America picks up at Panama. So people didn't know where Honduras was, right? But being in Newark, I've never felt out of place, I'll be honest, I'm a displaced person from Brooklyn. I grew up in Bushwick before gentrification, but I grew up in a neighborhood that didn't look very different from the Ironbound. I had a textile factory right next to me, and it would always spew this blue smoke that I thought was cool to hang out in. But obviously in Newark, I've learned oh no, I was damaging my lungs since I was a kid, right? And being able to tell that story and add that humor, right? Because if there's one thing, is we will laugh together, even no matter how depressing it is. We'll laugh, we'll crack up, we'll dance, we'll cry. And I think that for me, that culture of giving everyone their space to be, having our intergenerational organizing and trying to find the joy in it, because one thing is definitely they win when they make us depressed and when they make us hopeless, you know, and only with each other are we able to give each other that support and spirit, that real spiritual help that we need for these fights, because these are going to be generational fights. Nothing is going to be won tomorrow, you know, like I'm aware of it. We all have to just keep adding our piece to that puzzle, so that as the world changes, we had our little piece of that pie. And I know that New York's going to be a beautiful city. It always will be.
Thank you for that. Anna, did you have anything to add?
No, I feel like Maria summed it up beautifully, you know, especially because I grew up in Newark too, and I got involved like Maria described, you know, because of my community called me in, right? And so and I can continue to do this work because I get to work with people like Maria and Kim, and be part of this extended community. So yeah.
Wonderful. Well, with the last 10 minutes that we have for this discussion component, I wanted to kind of pose some of the sentiment that's coming from the audience, and then also ask one last question. So many of the audience members have been pointing out that information regarding environmental pollutants and environmental injustice isn't always readily available to the average person. And so some questions for all of you is, well, first, how did you become aware of these issues? How did you become involved? And, you know, do you have advice for how people could start to, you know, work environmental justice and fighting for justice, you know, into their lives? And really the last question kind of tied in to that general sentiment is, right now, we're living in an unprecedented time when it comes to addressing environmental issues, you know, issues of climate change, pollution, biodiversity loss. And so with this kind of unprecedented time in human history, do you find hope for, you know, righting the wrongs of environmental racism and moving forward? And this is something would want all the panelists to speak to. So Al, do you want to kick it off, and then we'll go to the other three?
Well, I think awareness really comes a lot through relationships, and for me, language is a really big has been a really helpful to me in terms of becoming more aware and involved. And for example, there's a major environmental issue at Indian Point nuclear power plant on the Hudson, where they wanted to release all these radionuclides and radioactive water. And every power plant releases radioactive nuclides into the water as part of their regular operations. This one, when it was decommissioned, when it stopped, they still wanted to do that. But it was through pressure of citizens that the state of New York said, no, we're not going to allow that. The indigenous name we have for the Hudson River is Mohicanatuck, Mohicans, Mohicanatuck, which means the river that flows both ways. That really profoundly expresses that river. I mean, it's at sea level all the way up to Albany. So you have tidal influences all the way up there. So it's really a river that goes both ways. And it connects us all, New York and New Jersey. I mean, the private company that's taken over there, the name is Holtec, and they are in Camden right now. And they want to build these, what they call small modular reactors. I mean, they might be 1/4 the size of a power plant. They call that small. And they wanted to export that throughout the entire world. You know, so Mohicanatuck, the river that flows both ways, it's a recognition of our connection, and you know how what comes back as well. There's the Maple project. They want to build a natural gas pipeline to take the frack gas from Pennsylvania all the way up to New England. They call it the Maple project. And I find it interesting. They like to have these colonial terms oftentimes, like the Pilgrim Pipeline or Colonial Pipeline, Algonquin Pipeline. You know, they all go through the Ramful Mountains. But our word for maple in our language is Assiniminshi, which means stone tree or tree of stone. And I thought that was an interesting word. And I looked at the maple tree, and it's actually considered to be amongst the hardest of the hardwoods. So these ancestors really had a profound knowledge of the environment and a profound awareness. They were involved in their environment, intimately involved in their environment, and intimately aware as well. So that would be my recommendation is, I mean, yeah, if you take anything away from what I'm saying is that our environment's here with us right now where we are. I mean, it's artificial, but it's still our environment. But also I think it's important to get to a natural environment. You know, New Jersey, surprisingly enough, if you know, there's a lot of, I live in the woods up there, or that's where our community is in New Jersey. You know, so I think it's important to get to the rivers, to respect the rivers, I know you might think I'm crazy, but that's the indigenous way, you know, to talk to the rivers, to talk to the mountains, you know, that helps you with these connections. And, you know, if you meditate on the river and the mountains, you will get messages on you know, how to deal with situations that you're in. So those would be some of the approaches I would recommend taking. So hope for me is I'll just end with the eagle. The eagle, in our language, the name for eagle is Wapalanao. Wapalanao, you know, it's like bird of the dawn, because the eagle goes the highest and goes to the sun as a messenger to the sun. So we have pretty much wiped out the eagles in the Hudson River Valley there, but they're back. And I see eagles oftentimes when I go to some of the sacred sites on the river here. So to me, that's hope. The fact that we have eagles that have survived let's be frank, the genocide we committed against those people. The fact that they survived and they're here and they're, you know, doing what they do, to me gives hope. And I remember being on the Hudson River one time and seeing an eagle come down, reach in the water, and came out with a fish. And to me, that gives me a lot of hope to see something like that on the sheet.
That would be amazing to see. So, Maria, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, well, you know, it's what gives me hope. I mean, honestly, it's being able to do this work with amazing people like the folks on this panel, right? Like, our community gives me hope. You know, it's just, first off, like not giving up, right? Because we've lost so many times, and I can't stress that the history of environmental justice kind of want to getting your ass kicked, you know, like, and feeling, sometimes it feels so hopeless at those bottoms, where you realize how systemic environmental racism has been, right? Like, how can racism be so insidious that it makes the air you breathe different? How could it be so insidious that it affects how much green space you're able to see? You know, how neighborhood floods when it rains for 10 minutes and people have to be rescued out their cars, you know, as we just saw over the weekend. To be able to hang out then with amazing people who have nothing but love for their community and who are trying to get back to balance, right? Because we all have to have our own journeys about that. You know, colonialism has stripped us of a lot of sacred relationships and made us stop listening to those instincts, and to feel like, man, you know, the fact that colonialism can colonize nature and say that's just for white folks who get to go on hikes and do like self-care or yoga in the forest, when it's something that's innate, it's our home, right? And we shouldn't see it as separate. Nature is not something that's over there, it is us, and you know, we are it. So it gives me hope to be able to engage in the defense of water with people, right? In the defense of the air that we breathe. That's important, and I take a lot of strength from the strength of our community, because at the end of the day, this fight for environmental justice, it's not about any individual. It's about what we do collectively as a species, as a people. And so I love being people with the folks on this panel. And I think any fight you're in, make sure your friends can have your back, right? And make sure you have your friends back. So that's what I love, and that's what gives me hope in this fight.
Thank you. Kim?
Yeah, I say to all what Al said and Maria. What gives me hope is the ability to train up the next generation of environmental advocates and activists, and to see, and I want to congratulate her once again in this audience. You know, my environmental justice organizer, Sada Rashidi, 22 years old, Newark resident, came back home after graduating from Spelman College. Majored in environmental sciences, and now she was selected to the NEAC, the National Environmental Youth Advisory Council. That gives me hope that the individuals that we train up in this space can take their rightful space in this fight. It gives me hope that, you know, years ago, there was no environmental commission in the city of Newark, and we fought when Cory Booker was elected, and I was on his transition team to say, listen, you got to at least give us an environmental commission, an office of sustainability. And so we see the changes that is happening. Mayor Baraka continued that with environmental commission. We have a Newark Green team. So now we have the Essex County Environmental Commission. You have places where you can go to talk about the issues that's impacting your everyday life. The air you breathe, the water you drink, and the food you have access or don't have access to. You have actual places to go to in your municipalities. Those municipalities who don't have a green team, who don't have an environmental commission, make sure you talk to your elected officials and have them establish one. Because if you don't have those conversations, someone else will be speaking for you. One of the first, principles of environmental justice that I learned when I attended the Second Peoples of Color Conference in DC in 2002 was that we must speak for ourselves. We have to be able to have a seat at the table and meaningful participation in the narrative of what we want our communities to look like. So that gives me hope that we are doing that. And we're fighting, and we're part of the change, and we're not letting individuals dictate to us as to what they want for us. We know we're in this battle, and I'm so appreciative, to have my colleagues, Dr. Ana Baptiza, Maria, New Jersey Environmental Justice Alliance, Clean Water Action. These are groups that we fought to have. It took us 12 years to get the first environmental justice cumulative impacts law passed. It took us 12 years to get that passed. That is one of the most powerful laws that we have. And then you look at not only us having youth now on the NEAC, we got Maria on the NEJEC, right? We're all over this. People from Newark and the state of New Jersey. That gives me hope. And so I want to make sure that people understand that. Reach out to us, join this fight, because we're passing that baton. And for those individuals who are not willing to pass it to you, snatch it out of their hands and join this fight, because we need each and every one of you. Ashe.
Anna, did you want to share what gives you hope?
I mean, how could you not have hope? Look at this amazing speakers that just shared with us. Yes, and I agree with everything they said. I work with a lot of young people too, because I teach at the university here, so I see a lot of young folks coming through, trying to find their place in the world, and I do believe that we need to train them up right to be in right relationship with these struggles, and that gives me a lot of hope, that there's a lot of, this next generation is not just going to lay down and get run over. They are going to stand up and fight, and that's what we got to get ready for, is the fight. It gives me hope to see them not just being apathetic, but really stepping up to that challenge and making moves to join the struggle, because it's going to take all of us fighting to make it through what's going to be some very difficult times. So yeah, the next generation coming up, but also the intergenerational work that we are all building here. When did did any of you in a million years, if 10 years ago we told you we were going to pass an EJ law that says you must deny a permit to polluters, and that we would get something on the order of $3 billion that actually has the word environmental justice in front of it, you would have told me I'm crazy, right? You would have said, Anna, we get EJ small grants, $50,000 if we're lucky on a good day. So that gives me hope that the ascendancy of these issues, but that still has to be fought for. Even when the money's there, even when the laws are there, it's still going to need fight, because they're not just going to give that to us. That's not going to just, so yeah, that gives me hope. We've come a long way, but we still have a lot more work to do.
And Anna, just so that the audience is familiar, could you give us a brief overview of the cumulative impacts law? And then also like what cumulative impacts means, because I don't think everyone will be familiar with it. And, really how this law kind of is very groundbreaking in like the context of the United States.
Yeah, and maybe what I could do is just put it in the chat, like a link to the law and some fact sheets, because then people can like really dig into it. And I know New York just passed an EJ law also very similar, that talks about cumulative impacts. And the New Jersey law very simply allows the state of New Jersey to say no to polluters, to industries who want to locate in communities that are already overburdened. Okay, and there's a lot of like technicalities in there about how you define an environmental justice community or overburdened community, what permits it applies to. It doesn't apply to all permits, but it is a big step, because nowhere else in the country until the New Jersey law passed was there anything written in law that said you must. It's not like you may, it's after you do some process and have a hearing, maybe you could consider it, or let's study it. No, it says you must deny that permit. And that's a big step, because being a community's right to say no more enough, that seems like some basic, like it seems like some basic stuff right there. But that is a huge step for communities, and that's just not enough, right? We still need to do more than that. Cumulative impacts means communities are impacted by air, land, water pollution, all different kinds of stressors, access to housing and safe, affordable housing, and clean, green jobs. There's a lot that we still need to do in addition to just saying no, because we have a whole bunch of things we want to say yes to, and that requires a whole other set of laws and policies. But the EJ law, the cumulative impacts law, is one little step in the right direction. It's a big step in terms of pushing back on industries, and many states are passing similar laws.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And it is very exciting to know that New Jersey is a leader in that area. And hopefully many more states follow suit as well. So then just with the last couple of minutes that we have before we jump over to like the formalized Q&A, I just wanted to have every panelist just take 1 minute to give an action item for the audience, or a next step where they can go from here with all of this information that you've provided them. And Al, you want to kick it off?
Well, there's a case, New Jersey versus Ford, where under the leadership of Chief Mann and Wayne Mann and the people of Ringwood, the state of New Jersey was moved or convinced to bring a case against Ford Motor Company. So I will talk with Chief Mann about how that could be opened up in terms of getting support, because I think that's one of the ways that we win is through publicity. Making sure people know what's going on and are on top of what's going on, because there was a investigative series called Toxic Legacy by by Jan Berry, one of the investigative reporters who uncovered Agent Orange. It's beautiful. They had interactive maps. They had interviews with people. One day we found out that not only was the link not there anymore, they destroyed the source material. Who benefits from that? Ford. So they're trying to erase us and our history. So publicity, keeping track of New Jersey versus Ford, that's very important. Indian Point Power Plant. Like I said, Holtec is based in Camden, New Jersey. I think we in New Jersey need to engage with the government more on these nuclear issues. I mean, the Hudson River, the Micaela goes through New Jersey as well. So I think we need to keep an eye on that issue. Indian Point Power Plant, Holtec. I mean, I know sometimes we feel like stepchildren here, but you know, let's take our rightful place on this issue. And then for the nuclear, sometimes I think this debate between nuclear and fossil fuels, you know, sometimes I introduce myself in talks as an addict. I say, I'm an energy addict. Like, you know, we need a 12-step program, almost like a cosmic level. So to me, talking about nuclear versus fossil fuels, that's like saying, what's worse, a heroin addiction or crystal meth? I think they're both bad. Let's do something different. And then finally, the Maple Line project. I mean, they want to go from northern New Jersey up to Massachusetts. And it's in the beginning stages. It's a company called Enbridge from Canada. And that's just going to really make things much, much worse in terms of the climate. I mean, they've already fracked about a third of Pennsylvania. They want to do more. And you know how addiction works. They won't go until they, you know, get healthy or die. So let's go ahead and get healthy. Those are the three actions I would say take a look at. New Jersey versus Ford on Ringwood, the Indian Point Power Plant project and nuclear in New Jersey, and then finally the Maple Line project and fossil fuels. Thank you. On the sheet.
Thank you. Maria, did you have any last action items?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for lifting up nuclear. You know, it is such a problem in our state, and PSE&G just keeps us locked in to nuclear, you know, so we definitely need to make visualize that issue a lot more in our state. I don't think people realize how deep in New Jersey is with nuclear. You know, we're worried about new fights coming up with hydrogen. Hydrogen is such a like explosive gas that people are trying to sell us on as being the future. So we need to definitely always keep a lookout for that. And, you know, in Newark, it's been amazing to have people across the state of New Jersey just pour their hearts out, reach out to the governor on our behalf. It shows that like the folks in Newark are not by themselves, right? Because we have people from all over the state reaching out to the governor about this fourth power plant. I mean, after we passed the strongest environmental justice law in the country, to have a neighborhood, not even the whole city, a neighborhood have 4 power plants, I think is really a miscarriage of justice. So I think it is on everyone in the state to continue pressuring the governor, right? Because ultimately he can politically stop this. He has refused to act. You know, he's just waiting until we give up. So I think that for me is number one, reach out to the governor and make sure that Newark does not end up with a 4th power plant.
Thank you for that. Kim?
Yes. You know, for those individuals who feel as though things are happening in their community and, you know, you don't see any real tangible results, pull up to these organizations. You know, Southwood Environmental Alliance, we have an open table. We have a seat waiting for you to come join this fight for environmental justice. All of our voices throughout every ward, we need each and every one of you in this climate fight for clean energy. It is so important. North Dig, we're working to make sure we have green infrastructure as a first line of defense against flooding. We need you to join in that conversation so that we can create the kind of jobs that our residents can maintain the green infrastructure that we build in our communities, solar and wind. You know, join the conversations because wind is coming. We want to get prepared now. So when these jobs are here, you're ready. And then I want to say that the Southwood Environmental Alliance and New Jersey Environmental Justice Alliance are the New Jersey hubs for Region 2 TIC-TAC. So there, you will never see the amount of money that's coming into our EJ communities ever again. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity where billions and billions of dollars are coming into our communities to address the environmental degradation that impacts our community. And so we want to make sure that you are a part of that conversation, that your organization, your community can tap into the resources. We can train you up. There's opportunities to learn how to organize, understand what environmental justice means, understand how to write a grant. And there is no subject matter that's not involved in our environmental justice fight. I saw in the chat maternal health care, understanding the importance of healthy food and access to healthy communities so that you can have healthy babies. That's connected to our environment. The lack of education that our children are receiving in our Newark public schools, that's connected to our environment. The workforce development, making sure that we're training up our youngsters so that they can be a part of the future. So we have it all at the Southward Environmental Alliance, and these are things through our TIC-TAC and through other training grants that we receive through NJDEP that we want the community to come and be a part of. And I want to just close with this statement. You know, nothing about us without us is for us. Don't let people speak for you. Join us in this fight. And we're located at 208 Lyons Avenue in the South Ward of the city of Newark. Thank you.
Anna, did you have a last action item for the audience?
Support these amazing organizations, Ironbound Community Corps, Environmental Justice. We you heard the website, the Ramapo Nation, you know, support these orgs, New Jersey EJ Alliance, you know, join them, sign up for their newsletters, get on their social media, follow them so you can keep up with the campaigns and the action items. They're all on social media, and also support them, you know, either volunteer your time, you know, join the campaigns, support financially if you can. These orgs are doing amazing work with, you know, and oftentimes, you know, struggling to pay all their organizers and to do the work and carry out the work. So if you can, and you have the time or ability to, please support these local orgs.
Wonderful, thank you. And with the last just couple minutes, I think the majority of the questions that were placed in the chat, I think were hit on in some way, shape, or form, except for one. So there was a lot of discussion about energy tonight. And so we have a question from Frederick Hadley that says, how can we make the playing field equal for Newark to make sure that we are acquiring contracts for clean energy projects and making sure those jobs are made available for Newark natives? And I think that's probably going to be for Maria or Kim.
Yeah, you know, and so we're doing a lot of work collectively on this, right? First, we've been trying to make sure that our communities have access to offshore wind training. That's going to be incredibly important for our folks. Too often, new industries do not invest in urban communities and when training up their workforces. I think it's going to be incredibly important when negotiating community benefits agreements to make sure you know what you're worth, right? Because unfortunately, with all this money flying around, a lot of people want to partner all of a sudden. And when people want to partner, they're not always giving you a fair amount of their budget. So definitely always be looking at budgets. Do not sell out for $5,000. Make sure that you're getting a good community value. Yeah, besides offshore wind opportunities, we're trying to make sure that we're bringing those investment opportunities into our city, because we don't just want to be part of the workforce. We want to be part of owning the new energy infrastructure, right? Because a lot of the way that we've concentrated wealth has to do with, you know, using our public dollars into private investment. And it's a ridiculous stealing of taxpayer dollars with nothing in return, just a fake promise, right? Where we see people not live up to that in our city and beyond, right? All over and over. So that takes all of us. That takes all of us being accountable and vigilant and paying attention to all the opportunities that come out, both from the federal government and the state government. So, you know, if you don't know what's going on, call the city and pressure them, right? Because how, you know, like Kim was talking about the master plan, these things matter. Like we're about to do Doremus Avenue, which is where all the industry is. We're about to do a Doremus Avenue redevelopment plan. It's going to matter what we allow and what we don't allow there, you know, and this is where the work does get very technical. Some might even say boring, but the devil's in the details, you know, it's where they sacrifice us. So it is all of our jobs to be in there, to be paying attention, and to be attending meetings so that elected officials and non-elected officials that make decisions for us, that they feel watched, right? Watched and accountable. And that only happens when community members show up.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add the bill that's attached to that, the S-2978 and Assembly 4658, that's requiring 100% of retail electricity sales in New Jersey to come from clean sources of energy. It's a bill that's sponsored by Senator Smith. And so it's real important. And like Maria said, I'm just going to say ditto, you know, join us. We're in a coalition. We're talking about all these things that can make a difference in our communities. And so there are things that we can do also. When we have our electric bill, we can go for the cleaner sources of energy, so that we are not only talking the talk, but we're walking that walk as well. But that's important, and we can send out more information to you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Well, I think that's about all the time that we have, but I wanted to reiterate a couple of the words from our panelists in terms of what environmental justice means to them. I think it's really important for us to consider, you know, how environmental justice really is liberation and imagining the world that we want and fighting for it and speaking for ourselves. I think that that's something, you know, I know as I'm Chicana, and oftentimes I, growing up, had to learn to, you know, find my own voice and to be able to say, you know, I can stand up for myself, I can stand up for my community. And, you know, that's a path that, you know, we all have to have our own journey to justice and seeing how we can fight in that space. But I just want to really thank you, all of you, for your very considerate words and sharing your work, and just doing the work that you do is really amazing. And so with that, I'd like to thank our panelists and then turn it over to Donna for final remarks.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. This was so informative and important. And I really appreciate how you gave us very specific action steps we can take. So there's no one on this call or Zoom that should feel helpless, like, oh, what can we do? You told us what we can do, and that was great. Thank you again. So just to thank our audience also for taking the time out, you know, to listen. And obviously you're interested in how we can improve and engage our environment so that it is healthy and joyful for everyone. And so the Standing in Solidarity always continues every month. In January, our Standing in Solidarity topic is about race, and race as a construct and what that means. So that will be on Monday, January 22nd on Zoom. We hope you'll join us for another amazing discussion. And this weekend, if you'd like to spend the holidays with NJPAC, we have a lot of events going on, but this Saturday is our annual Kwanzaa celebration, which takes over the entire building with performances, workshops, vendors, food. It's amazing. So please come and join us on Saturday. We start at 9 a.m. and we go well into the evening because we have Forces of Nature Dance Company performing, and we have Hip Hop Nutcracker. So many wonderful things to do. Look forward to seeing all of you in the new year. Please have a happy, healthy, and safe holiday season. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.